prison. Mozambique violence forces 100,000 to flee as displacement crisis deepens. In other news, gunman hijacks aid plane in South Sudan, demands flight to Chad. We'll bring you the details of these stories and more in a moment. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. First on Spotlight Africa, the leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda are set to sign a peace deal aimed at ending the long-running conflict in the region at a summit hosted by U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington. Ahead of the summit, there has been an escalation in fighting in resource-rich eastern DR Congo between government forces and rebels believed to be backed by Rwanda. DR Congo's army accused its rivals of attempting to sabotage the peace process, but the M23 rebels said the army had launched an offensive in breach of a ceasefire. At the start of the year, the M23 seized large parts of eastern DR Congo in an offensive that saw thousands killed and many more forced from their homes. DR Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi and his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame have frequently exchanged insults in recent years, each accusing the other of starting the conflict. Trump got the two countries' foreign ministers to sign a peace accord in June, hailing it as a glorious triumph. Tshisekedi and Kagame will now endorse it, with several other African and Arab leaders, including those of Burundi and Qatar, expected to attend the signing ceremony. Now in Kenya, a parliamentary inquiry has accused British soldiers stationed in the country of repeated sexual abuse, unsafe training practices and environmental violations, saying the behavior has made the foreign troops feel like an occupying force. The report, released this week by Kenya's Defense and Foreign Relations Committee, reflects growing anger over the conduct of the British Army training units Kenya Batuk, which hosts thousands of UK soldiers every year. Britain's Defense Ministry told reporters it deeply regrets the problems linked to its military's presence and said it is willing to investigate any new allegations once evidence is submitted. The most high-profile case involves the 2012 murder of a 21-year-old Agnes Wajuru near a British training camp in Nyanyuki. The main suspect, British soldier Robert Porkis, was arrested in the UK last month after years of campaigning by Wajuru's family and Kenyan activists. He denies any role in her death and is now facing extradition proceedings. In another development, a Libyan man accused of crimes against humanity and war crimes at a Tripoli prison made his first appearance before judges at the International Criminal Court on Wednesday. 47-year-old Khalid Mohammed Ali sat expressionless as the court official read out charges of murder, rape, and torture. He spoke only to confirm his identity and later asked judges to release him while the case proceeds. Presiding Judge Elulia Motok told his lawyer to file a written request for provisional release. El-Hishiri was transferred to the Netherlands on Monday after Germany arrested him in July on a sealed ICC warrant. Prosecutors say he was a senior commander at Tripoli's Mitiga prison between 2015 and 2020, ordering or overseeing the abuse of detainees. He faces 6 counts of crimes against humanity and 6 counts of war crimes, including personally murdering 1 detainee and directing the murder, rape, and torture of others. He was not required to enter pleas. Judges will decide at a May 19 hearing whether the evidence is strong enough for a full trial. His case would be the ICC's first Libyan trial since the United Nations ordered an investigation in 2011. The court still has warrants for 9 other Libyan suspects, including a son of Muammar Gaddafi. Elsewhere, officials in Minneapolis in the United States have joined forces to allay the fears of the city's sizable Somali community. Their comments came after President Donald Trump escalated his attack on Somali immigrants, saying they should go back to where they came from. Statements by the mayor, the police chief, and other city officials also come amid reports that federal authorities are preparing a targeted immigration enforcement operation in the state of Minnesota. United States for decades and benefits both the culture and the economic resilience of the city. Frey added that targeting Somali people will undoubtedly mean that due process will be violated. Trump last week said he was terminating temporary protected status for Somalia that protects them from deportation and allows them to work in the U.S. due to unsafe conditions in their country. On Tuesday, he escalated rhetoric about Minnesota's sizable Somali community, saying he did not want immigrants to stay because they contribute nothing. Frey pushed back, saying the Somali community had added greatly to Minneapolis. In Mozambique, fresh developments reports close to 100,000 people in northern Mozambique being forced to flee in recent weeks after armed forces stormed their villages, burning homes and attacking civilians. In Nampula province, schools, churches and open spaces are crowded with newly arrived families. This is the fourth massive influx of displaced people in recent months, and it is putting pressure on already fragile host communities. The insurrection of fighters affiliated with the so-called Islamic State has already displaced more than 1.3 million people since it began in Cabo Delgado, the country's northernmost state, in 2017. Since the start of the year, attacks have spread into Nampula and Niza provinces, bringing violence closer to communities that had previously hosted displaced families. The United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, says it will need close to $40 million next year to meet rising needs in the region. This year, funding stands at just 50% of the required amount. In the meantime, the agency says overcrowded shelters and the lack of response is forcing some people to return to unsafe areas. Meanwhile, the United Nations Refugee Agency is expressing grave concern as escalating attacks in northern Mozambique forced tens of thousands from their homes. In just the past week, more than 100,000 people have fled, with the violence now spreading into districts that were previously considered safe. Xavier Creech of UNHCR described the humanitarian situation as dire. According to him, it is the fourth massive influx that northern Mozambique has faced in recent months, and resources are now really missing. People need food, shelter, water, and support, and arrive traumatized. Mental health care is absolutely a requirement, but the capacity is not there. Creech added that host communities are overwhelmed with displaced families living in overcrowded classrooms and shelters. He also highlighted the ongoing threat of sexual violence against women, emphasizing the urgent need for international solidarity to provide life-saving assistance. The conflict, which began in Cabo Delgado in 2017, has already displaced more than 1.3 million people. But in 2025, attacks are spreading into Nampula and Niassa, putting communities that had previously hosted displaced families at risk. United States to restrict visas for Nigerians involved in violence against Christians. Stay tuned for details of this and more after this timeout. Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. This is still Spotlight Africa. We head back to West Africa here in Nigeria, where fresh developments suggest that the United States on Wednesday said it will restrict visas for Nigerians it believes are responsible for what it described as anti-Christian violence. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Wednesday said Washington was taking decisive actions in response to the mass killings and violence against Christians in Nigeria. The restrictions will apply to anyone involved and their families, he said, mentioning radical Islamic terrorists, Fulani ethnic militias and other violent actors in Nigeria and beyond. Rubio added that this policy would apply to other governments or individuals engaged in violations of religious freedom. The development comes weeks after President Donald Trump threatened military action in Nigeria over what he described as the persecution of Christians by radical Islamists there. Trump also declared Nigeria a country of particular concern. Abuja has repeatedly denied his claims, saying the attacks are driven by criminal motives, land disputes and resource competition, rather than religious faith. Human rights experts say more Muslims have been killed by the Islamist Boko Haram groups than Christians. Away from that, Sudan is facing the world's largest humanitarian crisis, with more than 14 million people forced from their homes as disease spreads and famine takes hold. The country descended into chaos in April of 2023 after a violent power struggle erupted between the Sudanese military and the Rapid Support Forces, triggering full-scale war across Khartoum and multiple regions. Rights groups are urging all parties to hold the fighting as conditions worsen. World Food Programme Deputy Executive Director Carl Serku appealed for urgent international attention, stressing the need for a ceasefire or at least a humanitarian pause. The WFP, I beg your pardon, warns that more than 20 million people in Sudan are now facing severe food insecurity as war devastates communities. Famine is already unfolding in El Fasher and in Kadugli in South Kordofan region. In separate developments, a gunman hijacked a small aid plane in South Sudan on Tuesday and forced the pilot to fly for several hours before the aircraft landed safely in the northern town of Wau. The suspect was arrested on the runway and no injuries were reported. The Sena Grand Caravan, operated by the U.S.-based Christian relief organization Samaritan's Purse, had taken off from Juba with medical supplies bound for Mawood in the country's northeast. Police said the gunman, identified as Yashia Mohammed Yusuf, hid in the rear cabin before takeoff. Yusuf is from the Abyei administrative area, a contested oil-rich territory claimed by both South Sudan and Sudan. Authorities said they still do not know why he attempted to divert the aircraft to Chad, a destination that does not share a border with South Sudan. After cycling in the air for hours, the pilot convinced the hijacker that the aircraft needed fuel and diverted to War, where security forces detained the suspect, said Satino Udol Mayen. Police spokesperson for Western Bahal Ghazal State said the gunman was wearing a reflective vest with the logo of an air charter company operating at Juba International Airport. The company's managing director, Paul Anthrobos, said they employ no one with that name. In a statement, Samaritan's Purse spokesperson Melissa Strickland thanked authorities for a safe outcome. A Zambian-American influencer and political vlogger has been sentenced to 18 months in prison for hate speech for making insulting remarks about Zambia's President Hakainde Hichilema. Zambian-born Ethel Chizono Edwards, who also holds a U.S. citizenship and works as an estate agent in New York, has a large following across various social media accounts, known as One Boss Lady. She has become renowned for her rants about the president over the last 2 years. The 42-year-old was arrested in Zambia, at Zambia's main airport, 3 months ago, after arriving to attend her grandmother's funeral. She pleaded guilty in a magistrate court in the capital, Lusaka, and apologized to the president for her comments. But Magistrate Webster Mulimbe said the court had a duty to send a strong warning, noting that hate speech had become increasingly common. Edwards, who has been in police custody since her arrest, was convicted under the Cybersecurity Act and the Cybercrimes Act, new legislation that came into effect this year. She admitted to using a computer system to publish the offensive statement, acknowledged having no lawful excuse, and conceded that her words were motivated by hatred. Her lawyer, Joseph Katati, described Edwards as a remorseful first offender with potential. He went on to detail how she was a breadwinner and philanthropist who sponsored a Zambian girls football team that would suffer from her imprisonment. He also delivered a detailed public apology on her behalf. And that is all we have for you at this time on Spotlight Africa, bringing you stories all around the continent. This has been put together by Spectrum Television. Do well to follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. Spotlight Africa, we are MM. Good afternoon.